My name is Abigail Williams and I'm 28 years old. 2 weeks ago I buried my father, Robert Williams, after a long battle with cancer. What should have been a time of mourning turned into a nightmare when my older brother Tyler started parading around like he already owned everything. He even took me to dinner just to mock me about my inheritance, saying he'd get the house in Dad's business. What Tyler didn't know was that Dad had other plans. The look on Tyler's face when the lawyer read the will is something I'll never forget. Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama stories. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this one turns out. Growing up in Boston, our family seemed picture-perfect from the outside. My father built Williams Real Estate Development from nothing into one of the most respected mid-sized development companies in Massachusetts. Our mother, Sarah, was the warm heart of our home, balancing Dad's intense work ethic with unconditional love and support. Tyler, 4 years older than me, was always Dad's golden child. From the time he was little, Tyler shadowed our father, soaking up every detail about the business. Dad beamed with pride when Tyler would correctly identify profitable properties or understand complex development concepts at a young age. Their bond was built on a shared vision for the future of Williams Real Estate. I, on the other hand, took after my mother. While Tyler and Dad talked business at the dinner table, Mom and I would discuss art, literature, and my school projects. She encouraged my creativity and compassion, qualities that eventually led me to pursue education as a career. When I was 16, our world shattered. Mom was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer and was gone within 6 months. Her death created a canyon in our family. Dad retreated further into his work. Tyler doubled down on proving himself in the business, and I found myself adrift without my greatest advocate. During my senior year of high school, when I announced my plan to major in elementary education, Dad didn't hide his disappointment. "Teaching, with your intelligence, you could get in Bea and join the company," he said, barely looking up from his paperwork. "Teachers barely make enough to live on. I didn't build this company so my daughter could struggle financially." Despite his disapproval, I followed my heart. College gave me distance from the tension at home, and I thrived in my education courses. I graduated with honors and secured a position teaching second grade at a public elementary school in Boston. My starting salary was exactly as modest as Dad had predicted, but the joy I found in helping young minds develop was worth every penny I wasn't making. Meanwhile, Tyler completed his business degree and immediately stepped into a management position at Williams Real Estate. Dad fast-tracked his learning, introducing him to important contacts and involving him in major decisions. By the time Tyler was 28, he was essentially Dad's second in command. My tiny one-bedroom apartment in a slightly run-down neighborhood contrasted sharply with Tyler's lifestyle. By 30, he had married Madison, a marketing executive from another wealthy family. They purchased a sprawling house in one of Dad's developments, drove matching luxury cars, and took extravagant vacations that they documented meticulously on social media. When I started dating Jason, a middle school science teacher I met at a district training, Tyler couldn't resist commenting on his Honda Civic and off-the-rack suits. "At least you two will understand each other's budget constraints," he said at a family dinner. Chuckling as though he'd made a harmless joke, Dad frowned but said nothing to defend my choice. Madison never bothered to hide her assessment of my life choices. "It's so noble what you do," she would say, inspecting my modest clothing or apartment with thinly veiled condescension. "I could never sacrifice so much. I guess not everyone has ambition." Despite the strained relationship with my father and brother, I maintained regular Sunday dinners at Dad's house. These dinners became increasingly tense as Tyler and Madison dominated the conversation with stories about business deals, country club memberships, and their plans to start a family once the timing is right for the business. I would occasionally share stories about my students' achievements or creative projects we'd completed in class. But Dad's interest seemed perfunctory at best. He would nod and smile, then quickly turn the conversation back to company matters. "That's nice, Abby," he'd say, "but did Tyler tell you about the new commercial development we're breaking ground on next month? Biggest project we've ever tackled." I learned to keep my contributions brief and focused on listening. After these dinners, I would return to my apartment feeling like an outsider in my own family. Jason became my emotional support, encouraging me to maintain the relationship with my father despite the difficulties. "Family is family," he would remind me. "Someday you'll be glad you made the effort." Little did I know how prophetic those words would become. 18 months ago, Dad called me on a Tuesday evening. His voice sounded different, more subdued than usual. "Abigail, I need to tell you something, and I'd rather not do it over the phone." "Can you come by the house tomorrow after you finish at school?" The next day, I sat in Dad's study as he calmly explained that he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors had given him 12 to 18 months. "I've already told Tyler," he said. "He's looking into experimental treatments and specialists, but I wanted you to hear it from me directly." I felt the floor shift beneath me. Despite our complicated relationship, the thought of losing Dad was devastating. Without thinking, I moved to his side of the desk and hugged him for the first time in years. After a moment of surprise, he hugged me back. "What can I do?" I asked, fighting back tears. "Just keep coming to Sunday dinners," he said with a small smile. "Maybe make them twice a week." Those dinners became 3 times a week, then 4 as Dad's condition worsened. I rearranged my teaching schedule, coming in early and staying late on days I wasn't with him, so I could leave promptly to prepare his meals, take him to appointments, and simply keep him company. My principal, understanding the situation, was incredibly supportive, allowing me flexibility that I promised to repay once the school year ended. Tyler, meanwhile, made appearances that grew less frequent as Dad's illness progressed. He always arrived in a whirlwind of energy, bringing printouts of new treatment options or telling Dad about how smoothly the business was running. "Don't worry about anything, Dad," he would say. "I've got everything under control. You just focus on getting better." But he rarely stayed long enough to help with the practical matters of Dad's care. His usual excuse was, "Someone has to keep the business running," often followed by a pointed look in my direction, as if to emphasize that his contribution was more valuable than mine. Madison stopped coming altogether after Dad began losing his hair from chemotherapy. "It's just too depressing," I overheard her tell Tyler on the phone, "and the house smells like a hospital." As the months passed, a subtle shift occurred in my relationship with Dad. Without the buffer of business talk with Tyler, we found ourselves having real conversations for the first time in years. Initially, these revolved around practical matters: his treatment plan, medication schedules, and diet, but gradually we began to speak about deeper things. One evening, as I was helping him back to bed after a particularly difficult day of treatment, he held onto my hand a moment longer than necessary. "I haven't been fair to you, Abby," he said quietly. "I've spent so many years focused on what I wanted for you that I never appreciated what you actually became." I didn't know how to respond, so I simply squeezed his hand. "Your mother would be proud of the woman you are," he continued. "She always said you had her heart." I think I was jealous of that. In the months that followed, Dad asked more questions about my teaching. At first, I kept my answers brief, assuming his interest was merely politeness, but he seemed genuinely curious, asking about my teaching methods, how I handled different learning styles, and what challenges I faced with classroom management. To my surprise, he asked if he could attend my class's annual presentation night, where my second graders showcased projects they had worked on throughout the year. It took considerable effort for him to make it. He was using a wheelchair by then and tired easily, but he insisted. Watching Dad observe my interactions with my students and their parents was surreal. I caught him smiling several times, particularly when a shy student named Marcus successfully presented his science project after weeks of practicing with me during lunch breaks. Afterward, in the car, Dad was uncharacteristically quiet. "You're good at what you do, Abigail," he finally said. "Really good. I can see why you chose this path." Those words meant more to me than any approval he had ever given. As Dad's health declined more rapidly in the final weeks, Tyler began showing up more frequently. His visits were still brief but more consistent. I often overheard fragments of conversations between him and Dad about the business, with Tyler repeatedly assuring him, "I'll take care of everything, Dad, don't worry." During this time, Dad asked me to bring him his old leather briefcase from the study. Inside was a journal I had never seen before and a folder of legal documents. "Some things I want to review," he said vaguely, waving off my offers to help. In the final days, Dad slipped in and out of consciousness. I rarely left his side, sleeping on a cot the hospice service had provided. Tyler made appearances, but always seemed uncomfortable with the physical realities of Dad's condition, often finding reasons to step out when the nurse came to change ifs or administer pain medication. On a quiet Tuesday morning, with me holding his hand and Tyler standing at the foot of the bed, Dad took his last breath. Despite our complicated history, I felt a piece of myself go with him. The days following Dad's death passed in a blur of arrangements and phone calls. I handled most of the practical details: the funeral home, the obituary, the service arrangements, while Tyler focused on notifying business associates and clients. At the funeral, however, Tyler seemed to have undergone a transformation. Standing at the podium in an impeccably tailored black suit, his voice breaking at perfectly timed intervals, he spoke about Dad's business legacy and their close relationship. To anyone who didn't know better, It would have seemed that Tyler had been Dad's devoted caretaker throughout his illness. My father trusted me with his life's work, Tyler said, looking solemnly at the gathered crowd. A responsibility I took seriously during his illness and one I will continue to honor now that he's gone. I sat in the front row, stunned by this revisionist history but unwilling to create a scene at Dad's funeral. Madison sat beside Tyler's empty chair, dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. The funeral was well attended, with business associates, clients, and employees filling the large church. Many of these people I recognized from Dad's descriptions but had never met personally. They approached me with condolences that often included comments like, "Your brother has big shoes to fill," or "Your father was so proud of how Tyler has stepped up in the business." At the reception afterward, held at Dad's house, Tyler worked the room like a politician, accepting condolences and having hushed conversations with key business figures. Several times I overheard him using phrases like "moving forward with the company" and "my vision for our future growth." Madison, meanwhile, had apparently already begun mentally redecorating. I found her in the kitchen with her interior designer friend, discussing the outdated cabinets and tragic lighting fixtures. "We'll gut this entire space," she was saying as I walked in. "I'm thinking white marble, brass fixtures, maybe knock out that wall for an open concept." "The funeral just ended," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Maybe hold off on renovation plans for a day or two." Madison had the decency to look momentarily embarrassed before recovering. "Of course, Abigail. We're just processing in our own way. Planning helps me cope with grief." Throughout the evening I felt increasingly like a stranger in my childhood home. Extended family members I barely knew offered platitudes about Dad being in a better place while helping themselves to the catering Tyler had ordered, significantly more lavish than what I had suggested. As the crowd thinned, I found myself on the back porch. Seeking a moment of quiet, Graham Peterson, Dad's oldest friend in the coup of Williams real estate, joined me with 2 glasses of Dad's favorite scotch. "Your father was incredibly proud of you, you know," he said, handing me a glass. I must have looked skeptical because he continued, "I mean it, Abigail, especially this past year. He told me how you stepped up, how you showed him what really matters." "Thanks for saying that," I replied, not entirely convinced, but we both know Tyler was his pride and joy. "The business was everything to Dad." Graham gave me a curious look. "Is that what you think?" He sipped his scotch thoughtfully. "Things aren't always what they seem, especially in the Williams family." Before I could ask what he meant, Tyler appeared at the door, calling Graham in for a quick business matter that can't wait. Graham squeezed my shoulder before leaving, and I remained on the porch until most guests had departed, as I was helping the catering staff clean up. I overheard Tyler on the phone in Dad's study, the door slightly ajar. "I'm thinking we sell off the smaller properties immediately," he was saying. "The development on Lexington Avenue too much hassle for the return. Then we can focus on the commercial properties and maybe expand to New York like we discussed." I paused, confused. Dad had always been passionate about the Lexington Avenue development, a mixed-use project with affordable housing units that he had fought the city for years to approve. It was his legacy project, one he spoke about with particular pride. When Tyler emerged from the study and saw me standing there, he quickly ended his call. "Abby, didn't realize you were still here," he said smoothly. "Madison and I can handle the rest of this. Why don't you head home and get some rest? It's been a long day for everyone." I nodded, too emotionally exhausted to question him about what I'd overheard. As Tyler walked me to the door, he mentioned casually, "By the way, Mr. Winters called. The reading of the will is scheduled for next Friday at his office. Just a formality really, but we should both be there." Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I simply nodded and left, the weight of the day's events settling heavily on my shoulders. 3 days after the funeral, I received a text from Tyler. "Madison and I want to take you to dinner tomorrow. Giovanni's at 7, important family matters to discuss." Giovanni's was an upscale Italian restaurant where entrees started at $40, not the kind of place my teacher's salary accommodated regularly. Still, thinking this might be an opportunity to discuss the house and any arrangements before the official will reading, I accepted. I arrived at the restaurant precisely at 7, dressed in the nicest outfit I owned, a simple black dress I'd worn to faculty functions. Tyler and Madison were already seated at a prime table, both impeccably dressed. Madison's diamond necklace caught the light as she air-kissed my cheek. "Abigail, so glad you could make it," Tyler said, signaling the waiter. "I've already ordered a bottle of Barolo, Dad's favorite." The first half-hour passed with surprisingly pleasant conversation. Tyler shared a few genuine-seeming memories of Dad, and I found myself relaxing slightly. Perhaps his grief had softened some of his sharper edges. After our entrees arrived, however, the real purpose of the dinner became clear. "So, Abby," Tyler began, cutting into his steak, "Madison and I have been discussing the transition, and we want you to know there's a place for you in the company." "A place for me?" I repeated, confused. "The front desk needs a new receptionist," Madison interjected with a thin smile. "Tyler thought of you immediately. The salary would be a significant upgrade from teaching, and you'd finally be part of the Williams legacy." I set down my fork, appetite vanishing. "I have a career, Tyler, one I love." Tyler waved his hand dismissively. "Teaching is a job, Abby, not a career. This is an opportunity to actually build something, to be part of what Dad created." "Speaking of what Dad created," I said carefully, "have either of you been to the house since the funeral? There are still personal items to sort through before any decisions are made." Tyler and Madison exchanged a glance that made my stomach tighten. "About that," Tyler said, swirling his wine, "no need to worry yourself with the house. Dad left it to me, along with the business, of course." "How do you know that?" I asked. "The will reading isn't until Friday." Tyler chuckled, the sound grating against my nerves. "Dad and I discussed everything extensively before he passed. The house, the business, it's all coming to me. He knew I was the only one who could properly manage his legacy." Madison leaned forward, her expression a mockery of sympathy. "You'll get Mom's jewelry, I'm sure, and probably some cash, enough for a down payment on a nicer apartment, at least. And if the financial situation gets tight," Tyler added with a smirk, "we might be able to fix up the pool house for you. It needs renovation anyway." The callousness of their assumption that I would need or want their charity struck me like a physical blow, yet something beyond their cruelty was bothering me. Dad and I had grown closer during his illness, and while we hadn't discussed inheritance specifically, his attitude toward me had softened considerably. "Have you actually seen the will, Tyler?" I asked directly. His smile faltered slightly. "I don't need to see it. Dad told me everything." "When exactly? Between your brief visits during his final months?" Tyler's expression hardened. "Just because I was maintaining the business instead of playing nurse doesn't mean Dad and I weren't in constant communication. Some of us had responsibilities beyond holding his hand." "Responsibilities?" I felt heat rising to my face. "You think sitting with our dying father was some kind of optional activity? While you were maintaining the business, I was maintaining him, bathing him, feeding him, making sure he took his medications." "And I'm sure he appreciated your help," Madison cut in smoothly, "just as he appreciated that Tyler was preserving his life's work, different roles, different contributions." Tyler nodded, his confidence returning. "Exactly. Dad understood that I was the only one qualified to take over. You're wasting your potential teaching snot-nosed kids how to color inside the lines when you could be contributing to something that actually matters." The casual cruelty of his dismissal, both of me and of my students, was the final straw. I stood up, hands shaking slightly as I placed my napkin on the table. "I think this dinner is over," I said quietly. Tyler shrugged. "Don't be so sensitive, Abby. I'm offering you an opportunity here, a chance to finally make Dad proud." "Dad was already proud of me," I said, surprised by my own certainty. "Something you'd know if you'd spent any real time with him these past months. I'll see you at the lawyer's office on Friday." I walked out of the restaurant, tears streaming down my face once I reached the safety of the parking lot. In my car I called Rachel, my best friend since college. "They're so sure they're getting everything," I told her, recounting the dinner disaster. "And maybe they're right. Maybe Dad never changed his will. Maybe those moments we shared didn't mean what I thought they did." "Or maybe Tyler's bluffing," Rachel suggested. "He's always been manipulative. Remember how he convinced your dad not to come to your college graduation because there was supposedly some emergency at work, only for you to find out later it was just a minor contract issue that could have waited." The memory stung, but she had a point. Tyler had a history of manipulating situations to his advantage, especially where Dad was concerned. Later that night, Jason came over after I texted him about the dinner. He listened patiently as I vented my frustrations and fears. "Whatever happens on Friday," he said, holding me close, "it doesn't change who you are or what you've accomplished. Your worth isn't tied to what your father left you." His words comforted me, but as Friday approached, my anxiety only grew. What if Tyler was right? What if those precious final months with Dad hadn't changed anything fundamental in how he valued us? What if, in the end, the business really was all that mattered to him? Friday morning dawned clear and cool. I chose my outfit carefully, professional but not showy. A navy blue suit I wore for parent-teacher conferences. I wanted to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. Mr. Winter's law office occupied the top floor of a dignified building in downtown Boston. The reception area featured dark wood paneling, leather chairs, and framed diplomas and certificates. Mr. Winters had been Dad's attorney for over 30 years, handling both business and personal legal matters. I arrived 20 minutes early, too nervous to sit at home any longer. The receptionist, a woman about my age with a kind smile, offered me coffee and showed me to a comfortable waiting area. "Mr. Winters will be with you shortly," she assured me. "He's just finishing up some preparations." At precisely 5 minutes before our scheduled appointment, Tyler and Madison swept in. Madison wore a designer black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, while Tyler was immaculate in a tailored gray suit, his expression confident and slightly bored, as though this were a routine business meeting. "Abby," he acknowledged with a nod, "you're early." Before I could respond, Mr. Winters emerged from his office. In his late 60s, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he projected an air of competence and discretion. "Ms. Williams, Mr. Williams," he greeted us formally, "and Mrs. Williams," he added, nodding to Madison, "please come in." His office was spacious but not ostentatious, with a large conference table rather than the imposing desk I had expected. A younger attorney I didn't recognize sat at one end with a laptop open, presumably to take notes. "Before we begin," Mr. Winters said once we were seated, "I want to express my sincere condolences on the loss of your father. Robert was not only a client but a friend for many years. His presence in this community will be deeply missed." Tyler nodded solemnly. "Thank you, Mr. Winters. We're all eager to honor his wishes and continue his legacy." "Indeed," the lawyer replied, opening a folder, "and to that end we're here today for the reading of Robert Edward Williams' last will and testament, which was updated and signed 6 months ago, with a codicil added 2 months before his passing." I noticed Tyler shift slightly in his seat. "Updated?" "Yes," Mr. Winters confirmed. "Now shall we proceed?" What followed was initially standard legal language: the revocation of previous wills and testaments, the appointment of executors Mr. Winters and Graham Peterson, and the certification that Dad had been of sound mind when the documents were signed. Then came the specific bequests. Various family members received modest sums. Dad's collection of rare books went to his alma mater's library. His vintage car collection was to be sold, with proceeds going to pancreatic cancer research. Tyler grew increasingly restless as Mr. Winters methodically worked through these smaller items. Madison checked her watch twice, her foot tapping impatiently under the table. "Now regarding the primary assets," Mr. Winters continued, adjusting his glasses. "First, the family residence at 247 Beacon Street, Boston, along with all furnishings and personal effects not otherwise specified." Tyler straightened in his chair, his expression one of anticipated victory. "This property is bequeathed in its entirety to Abigail Sarah Williams." The words hung in the air for a moment before registering. My breath caught as Tyler's face contorted in confusion, then anger. "That's impossible," he interrupted. "There must be a mistake." "There is no mistake, Mr. Williams," the lawyer replied calmly. "The language is quite clear." Madison's perfectly manicured hand gripped Tyler's arm, her knuckles white. "Regarding Williams Real Estate Development Corporation," Mr. Winters continued, "Robert Williams' controlling interest, constituting 65% of company shares, is bequeathed to Abigail Sarah Williams. The remaining 35% of Robert's shares are bequeathed to Tyler Robert Williams, in addition to the shares he already holds." The room seemed to tilt around me. I had expected perhaps a small inheritance, maybe even a minority stake in the company, but the house, a controlling interest, it made no sense. Tyler was on his feet now, his face flushed. "This is absurd. Dad would never do this. Abby knows nothing about real estate or running a business. This will was clearly made under duress or manipulation." Mr. Winters remained impassive. "Your father included a letter explaining his decisions. Perhaps that will address your concerns." He withdrew an envelope from the folder and began to read. "To my children, Tyler and Abigail. If Mr. Winters is reading this letter, then I have passed on. I hope my departure was peaceful and that both of you were able to find some closure in our final days together. The decisions reflected in my will may come as a surprise, particularly to Tyler, who has long expected to inherit both the family home and full control of Williams' real estate. I feel I owe you both an explanation. During my illness, I had the opportunity to reflect on my life and the legacy I want to leave behind. While Williams' real estate has been my life's work, I've come to realize that a man's true legacy is not measured in buildings or bank accounts, but in the character of his children. Tyler, you have demonstrated remarkable business acumen and drive. These qualities will serve you well in your career. However, you have also shown concerning tendencies toward prioritizing profit over people and prestige over principle, approaches that run counter to the values upon which I built this company. Abigail, you have demonstrated extraordinary compassion, integrity, and quiet leadership throughout my illness and indeed throughout your life. Your decision to pursue teaching, which I regrettably failed to support at the time, now strikes me as perhaps the wiser path. You chose purpose over profit, service over status. The care you showed me in my final months revealed not only your character but also organizational skills, attention to detail, and an ability to make difficult decisions under pressure, all qualities essential to running a successful business. Therefore, I leave the family home to Abigail, as a place where our family's memories can be preserved with the respect and care they deserve. I leave controlling interest in Williams' real estate to Abigail as well, with the hope that she will bring her unique perspective and values to the company I built. I ask only that you both honor my memory by finding a way to work together, combining Tyler's business experience with Abigail's leadership and vision. With love and hope for both of you, Dad. The silence that followed was absolute. I struggled to process the words I'd just heard, words that seemed to rewrite my understanding of my relationship with my father. Tyler broke the silence, his voice trembling with barely controlled rage. This is not what Dad wanted. She manipulated him when he was weak and dying. Anyone can see that. Mr. Winters remained unruffled. I can assure you, Tyler, that your father was of completely sound mind when he made these changes. Dr. Eleanor Richards, his oncologist, provided a written statement confirming his mental competence, which is included with the will documentation. Furthermore, I personally witnessed his signature, along with 2 other independent witnesses. Madison, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly stood. This isn't over. We'll contest the will. Robert was clearly not in his right mind. You're welcome to try, Mr. Winters replied evenly, but I should mention that there is one additional condition that might influence your decision. He turned another page in the document. In the event that either Tyler or Abigail contests this will, their entire inheritance will be forfeit and their portion will be donated to the Boston Children's Hospital Building Fund. Tyler's face paled slightly at this information. Madison tugged at his arm, whispering something urgent in his ear. There is one final condition, Mr. Winters continued. Regarding Williams' real estate development, Abigail must serve as CEO for a minimum period of 2 years before any shares can be sold or transferred. If she declines this role or resigns before the 2-year period is complete, the company in its entirety will be liquidated and the proceeds donated to a selection of charitable organizations listed in Appendix. I felt the weight of this stipulation immediately. Dad hadn't just left me the company, he was forcing me to run it. It was a vote of confidence that simultaneously terrified me. This is ridiculous, Tyler exploded. She's a school teacher. She can't run a real estate development company. That decision is now Ms. Williams to make, Mr. Winters replied calmly, not yours. Madison turned to me, her expression a mixture of fury and calculation. This isn't what we planned, Abigail. Think about what you're doing. You don't want this responsibility. Before I could respond, Tyler cut in, his tone suddenly modulated, almost reasonable. Look, Abby, this is a mistake, but we can fix it. I'll buy your shares more than fair market value. You can keep teaching, live your simple life, but with a much nicer apartment. Maybe even a house of your own. I need time to think, I said quietly, standing up on legs that felt unsteady. Mr. Winters, are we finished for today? We are, he confirmed. I'll have copies of all documents sent to both of you by Monday. In the meantime, nothing changes with the company operations. Mr. Peterson will continue day-to-day management until Abigail makes her decision. This isn't what we planned, Madison repeated as I gathered my purse, her voice carrying a hint of panic now. I turned to her slowly. What exactly did you plan, Madison? Her eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. Nothing, this has all just been a shock. I nodded, unconvinced, and headed for the door. Tyler called after me. Abby, we need to talk about this. You can't seriously be considering running the company. But I was already walking out of the office, my mind racing with possibilities I had never before considered. The weekend after the will reading passed in a blur. I called in sick to school on Monday, something I rarely did, needing time to process the monumental decision before me. Tyler called repeatedly, his messages evolving from angry demands to reasonable-sounding proposals to buy me out. Abby, be sensible, his latest voicemail said. You don't want the stress of running a company. I'm offering you $5 million cash for your shares. You could buy any house you want. travel the world, still teach if that's what makes you happy. Just call me back so we can discuss this like adults." I didn't return his calls. Instead, I drove to Dad's house, my house now, a concept I still couldn't quite grasp, and wandered through the familiar rooms, memories flooding back with each step. In Dad's study, everything remained exactly as he had left it, from the half-filled legal pad on his desk to the reading glasses perched on top of a stack of industry magazines. As I sat in his chair, my phone rang. It was Graham Peterson. "Abigail," he said when I answered, "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I thought you might have questions after Friday's revelation." "About a million," I admitted. "Do you have time to meet?" "I'll bring lunch to your father's house in an hour, if that works for you." Graham arrived precisely on time, carrying a bag from my favorite sandwich shop and a thick folder tucked under his arm. At 62, he had been my father's right-hand man for over 20 years and knew more about Williams real estate than anyone except Dad himself. Over lunch, Graham filled in gaps in my understanding of the company's current projects, financial status, and organizational structure. The business was solid, conservative in its growth but consistently profitable, with a reputation for quality and ethical dealings that set it apart from many competitors. "Your father built something special," Graham explained, "not just successful, but respected. That's rare in this industry." "Then why would he risk it all by leaving it to me?" asked, the question that had been haunting me since Friday. "I don't know the first thing about real estate development." Graham smiled slightly. "Robert didn't make this decision lightly or suddenly, Abigail. He'd been watching you for years, even when you thought he wasn't paying attention." He reached into his folder and pulled out a bound notebook I recognized as one of Dad's journals. "He asked me to give you this if the will reading went as expected." I accepted the journal with trembling hands. He knew Tyler would react badly. He hoped otherwise, but yes, he anticipated some resistance. Graham hesitated before adding, "Your brother has been making some concerning decisions over the past year, pushing for quick profits over sustainable growth, cutting corners on quality to reduce costs. Your father was worried about the direction Tyler would take the company if given complete control." Opening the journal, I found entries dating back several years. Many pages contained observations about both Tyler and me, notes about our character, our decisions, our values. I was stunned to read Dad's detailed observations of my teaching career. He had apparently attended school events I never knew he's been to, spoken with my principal about my performance, even read articles I'd published in education journals. One entry from about a year before his diagnosis stood out. "Attended Abigail's class presentation night incognito, sat in back, left early. Her interaction with students shows remarkable leadership, firm but kind, clear expectations, individual attention. The children clearly respect and trust her. When a student struggled, her patience never wavered. She has the same instinctive understanding of people that Sarah had, a quality I've always lacked and one that would serve Williams real estate well. Tyler has the technical knowledge but lacks this human touch. Together they could be formidable. Separately, I fear for the company's soul if left solely in Tyler's hands." Tears blurred my vision as I read entry after entry, discovering a father I never knew I had, one who had been proud of me all along, just unable to express it until his final months. "He really believed I could do this," I said finally, looking up at Graham. "He did," Graham confirmed, "and for what it's worth, so do I. The company doesn't need another real estate expert, it has plenty already. What it needs is a leader with vision and values, someone who can see beyond the next quarter's profits." Over the next few days I dove into research, determined to make an informed decision. I requested company financials, project portfolios, and organizational charts. I spoke with Jason and Rachel, both supportive but concerned about the stress such a radical career change might bring. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you," Jason assured me, "but make sure you're doing this for the right reasons, not just because it's what your dad wanted." I also visited my school, discussing the situation with my principal. She was understandably disappointed at the possibility of losing me mid-year, but offered a sabbatical if I needed time to sort things out. A week after the will reading, I discovered something that cemented my decision. While reviewing recent company proposals, I found Tyler's plans for the Lexington Avenue development, Dad's legacy project. Tyler had completely redesigned it, eliminating the affordable housing units in favor of luxury condominiums and high-end retail space. The projected profit margin was substantially higher, but it betrayed everything the project had originally stood for. Attached to the proposal was an email from Tyler to several board members, dated just 2 weeks after Dad's diagnosis. "With my father's health situation, we need to consider a more profitable direction for the company. The Lexington Avenue project is currently designed as a drain on resources with minimal return. The attached redesign will triple our ROI within the first year. I recommend we move forward with these changes immediately while my father is focused on his treatment. The board had apparently resisted, insisting that any major changes to the project required Dad's approval. Tyler had backed down temporarily, but based on the conversation I'd overheard after the funeral, was clearly planning to implement these changes as soon as he gained control. That evening I called Graham. "I've made my decision," I told him. "I'm going to accept the role, but I'll need your help, a crash course in real estate development and a lot of patience as I learn." "You'll have both," he promised, "and more support than you might expect. Not everyone at Williams shares Tyler's vision for the future." The next morning I called Tyler and asked him to meet me at Dad's my house. He arrived looking confident, a contract already in hand. "I'm glad you've come to your senses," he said, settling into one of the living room chairs. "I've had our lawyers draw up the paperwork for the share transfer, very generous terms, as I mentioned." "I'm not selling, Tyler," I said quietly. He stared at me, momentarily speechless. "What?" "I'm not selling my shares. I'm going to run the company as Dad wanted." Tyler's laugh was incredulous. "You can't be serious. You're a teacher, Abby. You know nothing about this business." "I know that Dad built it on principles of quality, integrity, and community investment, principles your luxury condo plan for Lexington Avenue completely abandons." His face darkened at the mention of the project. "You've been snooping through company files. That's confidential information you have no right to access." "Actually, as majority shareholder and incoming CEO, I have every right." I kept my voice calm despite my racing heart. "I'm not selling, Tyler, but I am offering you a choice." "A choice?" he repeated skeptically. "You can fight me on this, make the transition difficult, and ultimately find yourself working for a competitor when I'm forced to let you go. Or you can acknowledge that we both have skills the company needs, stay on as coup, and help me honor Dad's legacy by building something we can both be proud of." Tyler stood abruptly, pacing the room. "This is insane. You'll run the company into the ground within 6 months." "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but that's a risk I'm willing to take. The question is whether you're willing to work with me to make sure that doesn't happen." He stopped pacing, studying me with new eyes. "You're really serious about this?" "Completely." For a long moment we stared at each other across the room where we had grown up, two siblings who had taken such different paths that now found ourselves forced to reconsider our relationship. "I need time to think," Tyler finally said. "Take the weekend," I replied. "I'll be in the office on Monday morning." Monday morning arrived with a mixture of terror and determination coursing through me. I chose my outfit carefully, professional but distinctly my own style, not trying to imitate either my father or the corporate fashion Madison favored. A tailored pantsuit in deep burgundy, comfortable but elegant low heels, and Mom's simple pearl necklace, the one piece of jewelry I truly treasured. The Williams real estate headquarters occupied 3 floors of a building Dad had developed in the financial district. As I walked through the lobby, I felt the curious gazes of employees who clearly knew who I was but had rarely, if ever, seen me in the building. Graham met me at the elevator, his reassuring presence calming my nerves slightly. "Ready for this?" "Not remotely," I admitted, "but here we are." The executive floor was quiet when we arrived, most of the senior team already gathered in the conference room for the meeting Graham had called. Tyler was notably absent. "He'll either show up or he won't," Graham murmured as we approached the room. "Either way, you proceed as planned." The conversation in the room halted abruptly as I entered. 8 faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism to outright hostility. I recognized most of them from Dad's descriptions and the company organizational chart I'd studied all weekend. "Good morning," I began, my teacher's voice steadier than I felt. "Thank you all for being here. I know this transition comes as a surprise to many of you." Just then the door opened and Tyler walked in. His expression was unreadable as he took the empty seat farthest from me. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. "As I was saying," I continued, "this transition is unexpected for all of us. My father's decision to leave me controlling interest in the company was as surprising to me as it is to you. I want to acknowledge that upfront." I paused, making eye contact with each person around the table. "I also want to acknowledge that I have a steep learning curve ahead of me. I don't have a background in real estate or development. What I do have is a commitment to the values that made this company successful: integrity, quality, and community investment." For the next 20 minutes I outlined my vision for the company, emphasizing continuity in current successful operations while highlighting several areas including the Lexington Avenue project where I intended to ensure we stayed true to Dad's original vision. I'll be relying heavily on each of you in your areas of expertise, I concluded. All I ask is for your patience and honest input as I get up to speed. My door will always be open. The response was mixed. Several team members asked thoughtful questions about specific projects and timelines. Two seemed openly supportive, while others remained reserved. Tyler said nothing throughout the meeting, his expression carefully neutral. As the meeting concluded and people began filing out, Tyler finally approached me. "That went better than I expected," he said grudgingly. "Thanks for coming," I replied. "Have you made your decision?" He hesitated. "I'm not promising anything long-term, but I'll stay on for now, help with the transition. After that we'll see." It wasn't wholehearted support, but it was more than I had honestly expected. I appreciate that, Tyler, really. The first few weeks were among the most challenging of my life. I divided my time between the company and completing my teaching commitments, working with my principal to ensure a smooth mid-year transition for my students. By day, I absorbed as much information as possible about real estate development, property management, and corporate finance. By night, I graded papers and prepared lesson plans for my replacement. Tyler maintained a professional but distant relationship. He answered my questions when asked directly but volunteered little. Other executives, seeing that Tyler was neither openly supporting nor actively undermining me, adopted a wait-and-see attitude. My first significant decision came 1 month into my tenure. The marketing team presented a proposal for a new luxury condo development that would require demolishing an historic building with significant community value but no official protected status. The projected profits were substantial. "The building isn't landmark," the project manager explained. "We've already quietly secured the permits. It's completely legal." "Legal doesn't always mean right," I responded, thinking of how Dad would approach this. "What's the community response likely to be?" Glances were exchanged around the table. "There will be some protest," Tyler admitted, "but they'll move on once it's done. They always do." "I'm not comfortable with that approach," I said firmly. "I want alternatives that preserve the building. Maybe a renovation that maintains the historic facade but modernizes the interior for mixed use." Tyler's expression tightened. "That will cut the profit margin by at least 30%. It will also generate significant goodwill and positive press," I countered. "Sometimes the value isn't all in the immediate numbers." To my surprise, several team members nodded in agreement. One of the project architects spoke up. "I actually have some preliminary designs for that approach. Your father had asked me to work on them before he got sick." Tyler's eyes widened slightly at this information. The meeting ended with a directive to pursue the preservation approach, my first real executive decision. Later that day, Tyler appeared in my office doorway. "Dad asked for those alternative designs. You didn't tell me that." "I didn't know," I admitted, "but it doesn't surprise me. Dad always tried to balance profit with purpose." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "You sound like him sometimes, you know. Not the words, but this perspective." Coming from Tyler, this was high praise. "Thank you." As the months passed, I gradually found my footing. I established a scholarship program for underprivileged students interested in urban planning and development, using company resources to provide internships and mentoring. I preserved Dad's legacy projects while carefully evaluating new opportunities against both financial and ethical criteria. Slowly, the company culture began to shift. Employees who had been hesitant about my leadership started bringing ideas forward, particularly those that balanced profit with community impact. Tyler, observing the shift in the positive response from both employees and the public, gradually became more engaged in our conversations. 4 months after taking over, I finally moved into Dad's house. I had been reluctant to disturb his space, but it was time. As I sorted through his personal belongings, I discovered a photo album I had never seen before. Inside were newspaper clippings, school program printouts, and photographs documenting my teaching career, awards I'd received, events I'd organized, even candid shots of me with my students that Dad must have taken surreptitiously when he attended school functions. The last page held a handwritten note. "Abby, if you're reading this, I've made the right decision. You'll bring heart to a business that needs it. I'm proud of the woman you've become." That night, I cried for the relationship we might have had if only we'd understood each other sooner. 6 months into my tenure as CEO, Tyler requested a meeting outside the office. We met at a small cafe halfway between the company headquarters and my former school. "I owe you an apology," he said after we had ordered coffee. I was an entitled jerk at the funeral, and especially at that dinner. The directness of his admission caught me off guard. What changed? Tyler stared into his coffee. Watching you these past months, you're good at this. Different from Dad, different from how I would do things, but good. The team respects you. The Lexington Avenue project is getting national attention for innovation in affordable housing. Even Madison admitted she was wrong about you. That must have been difficult for her, I said with a small smile. Tyler laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in years. You have no idea, but she's coming around, we both are. I never wanted to push you out, Tyler, I said seriously. Dad wanted us to work together for a reason. Your business knowledge, my people skills, we complement each other. I'm starting to see that, he admitted. I was so focused on getting Dad's approval that I lost sight of what he actually valued. It wasn't just business success, it was integrity, purpose. We talked for hours that day, really talked, in a way we hadn't since we were children. Tyler shared his insecurities, his desperate need to prove himself to Dad. I shared my feelings of being overlooked, undervalued. We began to understand each other as adults, not just as the roles we had played in our family drama. A year after Dad's death, Tyler and I visited his grave together. The company was thriving under our joint leadership. My vision and values paired with Tyler's business acumen and industry knowledge. We had become a surprisingly effective team. I think he knew exactly what he was doing, Tyler said as we stood before the headstone, manipulative to the end. I laughed softly. Strategic planning, he would have called it. He would be proud of what we've built together, Tyler said, his voice unusually gentle, prouder than he would have been if either of us had done it alone. As we walked back to our cars, I reflected on the journey of the past year. I had lost a father but found my voice. I had stepped into a role I never expected and discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. Most importantly, I had begun to heal a sibling relationship that had been broken for decades. Dad's true legacy wasn't the company or the house. It was the wisdom to know that sometimes what looks like favoritism is actually insight, the ability to see what each of his children truly needed to grow. Tyler needed to learn that business success without ethical foundation is ultimately empty. I needed to recognize and step into my own leadership potential. In the end, Dad's most valuable bequest wasn't measured in property or shares. It was the opportunity for his children to finally see and appreciate each other, and through that reconciliation to find peace. So, have you ever had a family inheritance situation that brought unexpected lessons or healing? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life family journey stories, and share this video if you know someone who might be struggling with family tension or sibling rivalry. Remember, sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't what's written in a will, it's the growth and healing that can come from even the most challenging family situation. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.